My guest today is Meghana Giridhar. She is an entrepreneur, artist advocate, and founder of Let's Curate, a New York-based global curator platform empowering independent artisans. Thanks so much for joining us today, Meghana.
Great to be here, and I've so been looking forward to our chat, Sage. Thanks for having me.
Me too. So this is a little different for me since I commonly interview artists, but you aren't an artist per se yourself. You help artists. You curate artists. That's what your site's called. So tell us a little bit about what you do, a brief summary, and in your own words, who you are and what your relationship is to art and artists.
So, like you correctly mentioned earlier, I'm the founder of a curator platform. And if the term is a bit vague for people, just to clarify, my platform is a space for creators and potential discerning customers to kind of get together and connect. I started this platform in 2019 after 10 plus years of being in the corporate field. I did my usual thing of pursuing a management degree, and I worked with a bunch of nonprofit organizations, VC firms. The story starts just like many other stories begin. But in 2019, 2019, something changed. And I launched this platform with a very small crowd of a group of 10 people from 10 countries. All of them were creators. All of them were individuals. And I'm going to talk more about that as we get into the interview. But essentially, my space is, I think of it as a dynamic collaborative space for people to create and for them to connect with people who appreciate the process that goes into all of that.
Right. I just love that concept. That's why we had to have you on, because just the idea of being for the artists rather than just like for the sale or we want to be for the customers, of course, but artists need that kind of support. Right.
So absolutely. And, the germ of the idea kind of it came out of, I'm a travel junkie. I'm crazy about traveling. And I've done that, I think it's also thanks to my parents who basically put me on an airplane the minute I was born. And then I've been doing all these years, it's just, countless flights and countless train rides and things like that. But it kind of came out of, a very unexpected channel, like through my travels, and where I met different people, and something about them made me realize that why are they not, known more than where they are from,
Right.
Essentially, it just happened because, when I would travel, I'm one of those kind of, you can call me picky. I'm one of those picky people who don't necessarily go to like the usual tourist traps. I've always been intrigued by the culture of a place and, everything that makes a place special. So I've always been in the habit of looking beyond the expected. And that included initially looking for stores that had different kinds of handmade products, then going deeper into, as I got older and my confidence built up, I would, on purpose try to look for villages or smaller towns that were kind of off the beaten track where I could connect with people, like I said.
Yeah.
And over my travels, I happened to meet 10 beautiful creators from 10 countries. Also very, that was not on purpose. I didn't want to kind of have like a round number, but it just so happened.
That's what happened. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And this was all during the time that I was working in an organization, my corporate life. And somehow I kept in touch with them, and I would say I'm so grateful to them because they gave me the support that I needed when I was about to make this crazy jump. And they were like, yes, we are behind you. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah. So they supported you to support them. That's such a win-win. We love that. That's great. Now, do you create visually at all yourself? Do you have any other creative outlets beyond the business? I mean, business is very creative, but.
Yes. So in terms of creating in the truest way it's described, I'm not a painter or a sculptor, or I don't make jewelry, but I do write creatively, and like I said, there's something about travel that has unlocked a creative aspect of my brain, which I think I would say it's just that's the part that really makes this whole thing alive for me. So for me, that is creating in terms of when not the typical definition. But
No,
yes,
but writing is very creative, whether it's
yes,
nonfiction or fiction or whatnot. I mean, I've done it all. I feel it's all very creative. It all comes from the same place,
yeah,
regardless,
yes,
So, and I absolutely agree. Travel is such an inspiration, not just a source, but a motivation for what we do
100%.
creatively. Yeah.
100%. There's something about being in a place that is strange,
Hmm.
that does not have all the things that you see countless times during your day-to-day routine, that
Right.
just unlocks something in the
Yeah.
subconscious. I think I've had my most creative ideas when I've been um, in a probably a cottage in the mountains somewhere.
Right.
It's not about, oh, being in a luxurious, like a glamping site. It's not about that. It's just about being away from your day to day, because that really bogs
Mhm.
you down. It bogs the mind down too.
Yeah. The bug
um
has the brain has ruts that it goes, and I actually did an episode on it. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, the brain, it wakes up. It needs new experiences. Feed your muse. That was the name of the episode. But yeah, absolutely. And travel is
yes,
one of the best ways because everything's new. The people are new, food's new, language sometimes it's new.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely does wake up the brain. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, I'm going to get into some little fun to get to know
sure.
you questions. So I didn't throw anything really hard at you. I really tortured some people, but um, how would your family or friends describe what it is that you do, that outside view?
you know I think by now, you friends who've known me for a long time and my family, I think they've come to expect the unexpected from me. So they would
Uh-huh.
think of what I do as, I do think that my kids especially, visualize me as someone creative and someone who is not afraid to try something new.
Yeah.
That's, and I've grown to be that kind of person, I feel, over the years.
Yeah.
It was timid steps, and now I actually feel quite fearless about doing a lot of things that I earlier would have never even expressed in words, or even if I had the thought, I would have probably just
Shut
buried
it
that
down.
thought, thinking, "Oh, this is just not
Yeah.
going to happen."
Yeah. Sometimes we need to see what we're made of first. We take those little steps and gain that confidence. That's great.
Yeah.
So, now, besides the business, are there other passions that help define you?
Like I said, I love writing, and I hope at some point, like I said, I always try to do something that's very new. So at some point, I hope I can pursue creative writing and kind of, learn more about that
That's
form
cool.
of creativity. I love reading, anything that kind of takes you beyond what's around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
The world is a big place, and I refuse to kind of just make my life um, based on what's around me at all
Immediately.
times. And it's one of those things when you're a mom, or you have a family or no family, or you have a job, you kind of tend to kind of get tunnel vision, and that's all you're doing every single time. So anything
Right.
that takes me out of that is I'm passionate about that, I
You're
would
big
say.
on that. Yeah. Yeah. I am so with you on that. Now, if someone was to write a biography of you today, what do you think the title would be? Or what do
Let
you think
me
the title
think.
should be?
It would probably, it's totally in line with what I've been saying right now. I think I would love for it to be in quotes, something like "won't be boxed in."
It won't be boxed in.
Exclamation point.
Yeah, yeah. No, it doesn't sound like you could be boxed in. So I thought it might be can't be boxed in. I
I
don't know.
don't- No, but I always feel like, oh, there are all these forces that are trying to, I don't mean people, I don't mean, but there's
Oh,
always
there's
things around you which
expectations
try to tell
and
you that, this, you don't need to do that. Like
yeah,
I had a cushy job. I was doing very well in my corporate job. I was by no means unhappy. This was not like, oh, I'm having a midlife crisis. What do I do
yeah,
now? I really need to like make a dramatic change. It wasn't any of those things.
yeah,
But it was just kind of, I feel like it was a voice from within that just said, you've done this for a long time. You're cruising,
yeah,
and I think you should stop cruising and
yeah,
try something
yeah,
that's a bit scary.
yeah. Trying something new, just like you said. So yeah,
Yeah.
I Yeah, I've done that too. I left my corporate job to go be an artist, and they were like, "What?" I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounded good to me. Worked out." So
There's
yeah.
a, there's a thrill to it. It's because it's
Oh,
just,
oh my goodness. Yeah.
it's literally like being in like a dark forest and you don't know where you're going, what you're
Right.
doing, but
Yeah.
it's just an adventure. And I feel like a lot of times you're faced with that, you're at the crossroads and you're like, I could just keep along this path, which is bright and sunny, and I know exactly where I'm going.
Right.
Or maybe I could just try this out. I mean, I told myself this or I always tell myself this when I'm attempting something what's the worst that could happen? I'm going to fall
Right.
flat on my face. I'm going to fail miserably. But, I have other tools and I have other skills, and I can always go back to a path that I know how to walk on.
Right.
So, if not now, when?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's great. Yeah. Okay. A couple of fun things.
Yeah.
Favorite guilty pleasure food.
I'm from India originally, and I've
Yeah.
been in the US for, I think it's been 15 years now, just in New
Yeah.
York. And I think any kind of Indian street food, I would just be in like a food coma. I'm in a food coma right now thinking about
Right.
it.
Oh, I don't want to distract you too much.
Yes, but any kind of Indian street food is just like I could have that all day, all night. It's
Oh,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like you see a little cart and you just like are a magnet to,
yes, yes. There's something about that which, and you try as you might, I can never make that at home. There's
right?
some
Yeah. You
it's
just
just
can't duplicate it or yeah,
yes.
I have that with some foods too. And I'm like, okay, never mind. Just,
I
I
know.
will go get it.
Just go to the food cart, enjoy it. Like
Yeah, just get it.
don't try to
Mhm.
reinvent this
Because you
wheel.
want to enjoy it.
Yes, yes.
So, now with all your travels, I wanted to ask you a question I don't usually ask, but what would you say is your most memorable travel adventure and why is it so memorable?
You know, uh, every place or every city that I've visited, when I think back, I always kind of it brings me to like one memory of the place because I think every place has it's a new it's new air, it's new
Uh-huh.
everything. But there was one I'm just there are quite a few in my mind, but I'll shortlist. I'll kind of hone in on one. This was during my trip to Morocco a few years ago, where we went there. We had and typically I plan everything. This was a trip we would just like let's just go and we'll
Uh-huh.
just figure something out. And we go and stay in like this traditional Moroccan um, hotel slash house, which is called a riad. And the owners, they came up and they said, "Oh, you're here, and you have to go for this hot air balloon. It's really amazing." That's all they said, and we were like, "Okay,
Uh-huh.
that sounds great. Let's do it."
Sure.
And I didn't know that meant waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Oh yeah.
So they, so the previous night at dinner, they're like, okay, so, we're going to knock on your door at like 2:45. And we were like, oh, is it
In the
2:45?
afternoon.
Yeah. Are we going to go? They were like, no, it's 2:45 in the morning. And I said, oh, okay. All right. So we don't know anything about the city. There's this little child who knocks on the door at 2:45 a.m. and he's like, okay, just come with me. And we're walking through these narrow streets.
Kidnapped by a small child.
Yeah, it was very, at that point I was a little obsessed with Game of Thrones. So it felt very Game
Oh,
of Thrones. Like I was like, where am I going? But it was, and it started off with me feeling so uncomfortable with this whole thing because I was like, I'm in
right?
a strange country. I don't know who this child is. Why
Right.
have they sent a child to pick me up? And it's like, where am I going? Then he transports, us to a jeep, and this guy, he was like a character out of a movie, like completely covered up, and he said, we're going to go to the desert, so you need to be
Oh.
complete. Yes, so it's still pitch dark. I can't see him. He can't see me. He's like, just get on the jeep. So me, my
Oh my
husband.
gosh.
So we're getting and we're like driving in the dark. It's super eerie. But by this time I'm still uncomfortable, but I'm still like, okay, there's a little bit of thrill that's creeping in.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we get to the desert and it's still pitch dark and there's a ginormous hot air balloon being filled up. And he said,
Yeah.
okay, you know what? I'm now handing you over to the third person, all strangers. We have no idea who they are. We don't know their names.
Oh my
And he
goodness.
just leaves us, and we were like, wait, who's going to pick? I didn't know who was picking us up. And, I'm a bit of a control freak. So that was super scary because I was like, what
Sure.
time? What are we going to,
What are the
are we going to be
details?
back
I don't
during
know what's going to
lunchtime?
happen. Yeah.
Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we get on the hot air balloon, and we're rising, and I have to tell you, it was an incredible feeling because they had timed it in such a way that the hot air balloon and the sunrise was at the same exact time.
Oh,
And I
amazing.
still have goosebumps when I think about this because it was just incredible. And I don't
Oh
think
my
I've
gosh.
ever
Yeah.
felt that. And you could, when we went all the way high up, you could see all the villages below.
Yeah.
And it was like this bird's eye view. It was just magnificent. And the guy also timed it in such a way that the sun rose to a certain point. We were at that same exact point. And then you can see, like the sun rays like spreading across the horizon. So
Uh-huh.
it's like liquid gold all across the
Man.
horizon. It was out of this world. I still, if I close my eyes, I can still remember how I felt. Um,
Yeah.
and this is why those people were not communicating much because when I came
Right?
down, they were like,
Yeah.
we didn't want it. They couldn't, obviously, they communicated in whatever way they could. Uh, but they said, we never tell people what the whole thing is about, like step by step, which is, oh, now, at 8:55, you're going to get on the, it's
Yeah.
not, it's
Yeah.
just go with the flow. And, I pride myself on kind of going with the flow and just like, taking it as it comes. And I was completely thrown off, but it was such a
Right.
great reminder to myself that sometimes you just have to just
Go with it.
just follow what people are telling you, and it might.
Hmm.
And when we came down, they had this beautiful, it was just a simple, beautiful hand woven carpet on which we sat, and they served like a traditional Moroccan breakfast,
Uh-huh.
very simple. And there were people, they were chatting, there were people from villages, and they just spoke to us, and then we went back, and it was just incredible. I that
Yeah.
really sticks out to me.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things about we do a lot of things that we don't know what's going to happen, but they can just it's just so wonderful when it does happen because you didn't have those expectations. And that actually is going
Exactly.
to key into a little bit of our conversation today
Yeah.
about kind of facing things that you're not really comfortable with.
Hmm.
And yet, and it's funny because I almost always ask my guests if they're a planner or a pantser. I didn't even bother putting that question down for you. It's like she's a planner. She is so
Yes. There's no, I mean, I think I should just write a P on my
a
forehead because that's
planner.
like,
Yeah, I could tell. I'm like, we got other things to talk about. We know
yeah,
this. So,
exactly.
well, let's kind of get into our subject matter today. We have a couple ideas. This is kind of at this point a little open, but we talked initially when we met about artists and being sometimes uncomfortable about trying new things, or they have certain kind of conditioning that they feel like they're supposed to do certain things, and that's not always true. So we're going to talk about taking unexpected avenues, honing your skills in maybe new directions. But before we totally get into that, because I want you gave a little bit of your background, but let me get a couple more details. What was your original degree in when you
So
graduated?
I did my undergrad in economics and commerce,
Mhm.
and then
Okay.
right after that, I uh, got my MBA, my master's in business administration right after my undergrad. Worked for a few years. This was all in India. I felt a little burnt out after that, and I just wanted to kind of add to my skill set, so I pursued another business degree at Berkeley, California. This was in
Hmm.
finance. The business degree in India was in international marketing, so I just kind of added on a layer of finance. And as I mentioned, right after college, it was a great experience. I was right in the headquarters of tech. So I worked with
Yeah.
VC funds, I worked with nonprofits. It was great to be with innovators and people. It's very inspiring, and it was very different from the other job that I was doing. So great experience. Worked in those fields for about 10 years. But even in those, I think I job hopped a lot
Oh yeah.
because I did the VC fund thing for a bit, and then I said, okay, maybe I should also try nonprofits. I work for nonprofits. I realized that I started off, my first job was with a very large venture capital fund. My next job was with a smaller fund, and it my the people that I work with, the group started getting smaller and smaller because I realized that I actually am best when I'm with a small, intimate group of people working on something. The smaller the group gets, the more invested everyone is. That was the first thing
Right.
I
Yeah.
realized.
Yeah.
When you're a cog in the wheel, you're a cog in the wheel. You're not, you're executing. You're
Right.
not actually idealizing or even putting that to work. So I realized I enjoyed that. So all this while I'm traveling, I've made my connections. So I think in 2019, there was this moment where I felt like, I think now I know what is really going to make me happy. And maybe this is something that it's time to switch lanes now.
Yeah. So you really kind of taste tested and started
Yeah.
realizing what it is that you want, and it culminated in this. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
did you have a particular plan after college? Like,
No,
did
actually, I
you?
didn't. I
Okay.
didn't. No, it was it was the thing. It took me so long to realize that without being, no one said, oh, you need to have a business degree after. No one gave me that
Yeah.
mandate. But I just thought it was something I should be doing. I did my
Yeah.
undergrad in economics and commerce, and I was like, oh, but of course I have to do a business degree. Like, no one really kind of, I would say, planted that seed in my head saying, you don't really need, you could. I'm grateful. I have to say that that was a foundation. It's an incredible foundation even now, all the degrees, all the academic
Sure.
skills that I've picked up. It is important. I would never undermine the importance of going to college, learning from people, things like that. But I didn't have a set path in mind. I
Yeah.
just kind of went, oh, this is what I do now, and now this is what I'm supposed to do. Now I'm supposed to get a job. So it was more or less like that.
Yeah. And I imagine that gave you the flexibility to have ended up where you are now because you didn't
Yes,
have
yes,
a goal
100%.
or expectation. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, you answered my next question already. So I'm not going to ask you how you ended up there today. Um, okay, so then what is it about handmade art that personally draws you? Because that's specifically what you're
Yes,
looking at Let's Curate, right?
yes. So, just to kind of give a sense of what the brand is, my network comprises of individual artisans and designers who focus only on the handmade slow fashion philosophy. And this is handmade by itself is special because there's a lot of the person in that product. I hate using the word product, but
Yeah,
it's
right.
the
Is what it
creation
is.
or
Right.
whatever they come up with. But the thing that really surprises me, excites me is that, it's a form of storytelling without anyone realizing that they're telling a story. And as you keep building on that, you're kind of unconsciously building a legacy, or you're passing on a legacy to someone who has liked it and is inspired by it. So many of my artisans, now my platform represents about 70 plus creators. Most of them have they either continuing what they've learned from generations past, which is great because there are so many dying arts, and artists find it's a challenge to be an
Yeah.
artist,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
um, stay true to what you really want to do. So there are many of them who are kind of following the path that they were taught, and there are many who have kind of spun it around on its head, and they have their own contemporary interpretations for that. But the foundation is still kind of the stories that they were told in terms of the techniques that they were taught, or processes that maybe their great grandfather did, and now it's obviously modernized. But the essence is telling stories.
Yeah.
It's a way of communicating who you are, and you are not one person. You are not just you are, I would say, a combination of everyone who came before you and everyone that you will meet in the
Right.
future.
Right. Yeah.
And to bring that all together in something that you make, that to me is very thrilling. It cannot happen on a machine.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you mentioned slow fashion. I don't know if everybody knows what that is. A quick definition.
Yes, slow fashion is essentially, these are artisans who take the time. It's literally what slow means. You take the time to perfect your art. There is no, they don't work with deadlines. They don't work with, there's no it's essentially also in terms of technique. There's no machine. There's no machine where there's no machines used for these kinds of things.
Uh-huh.
So slow fashion essentially is using sustainable products, taking your time to perfect your art, and kind of changing lanes when you want to. This is not about meeting a fashion season deadline.
Yeah, yeah. That's a different attitude. Oh, yeah. I mean, I know about slow fashion in terms of the environmentally friendly
Yes.
aspect and whatnot. So yeah, I never really thought about like if it works all the way through to the maker as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay. So now when we first met, you mentioned that you thought there were significant avenues that artists didn't readily explore. Can you explain what kind of avenues you were referring to and what an exploration of them could do for an independent artist?
I love this question because I think this was the basis of my entire idea to kind of kickstart this. So, like I said, during my travels, I met about 10 people from 10 countries, and they were people who were working in isolation. So they were in little towns, sourced their own materials, literally went to farms and got like the cotton and then the spun the cotton,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
they had never even shown their stuff in beyond the little town that they were in. That to me was shocking
Right.
because
Yeah.
I was, I had found, it was like a visual treat because I had found these things, and it was a shame that they had, their mind had not even gone to that phase where, they felt confident that they could actually present their work beyond that little space. There's nothing wrong with being happy with where you are, but
Sure.
I think it's, as a creator, it also inspires you to push the boundaries a little bit. So I think the biggest challenge for these 10 people was they were just scared to challenge themselves.
Yeah.
So, one of our very first creators is this person who makes wooden boomerangs. And he is based in a little town outside Lithuania, like just by Lithuania.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he had a little website where he did stuff. It was very mom and pop kind of thing. He had learned this from his dad. So when I spoke to him, he said, "Oh, I've never even been out of this place." So to me, it was
Himself, not
frightening.
with his art.
Yeah, it was frightening.
Oh.
And I was like, this is unacceptable. Like this, you cannot.
I refuse to accept this for
Yes.
you.
So I think, looking beyond what's around you, it has been a challenge for many of the people that I have curated, so to say. They were also, I think, even in small towns, there was this thing of, oh, if I don't have 50 pieces in a collection, there's no way I can show this to anyone. Again, this
Right.
is something that is through literature, through social media. This is something that is kind of in everyone's brain, and I don't know why, where they feel, oh, if I just make one piece, that's, I can't even talk about it, I can't even show that. And that actually came to our rescue during COVID because we were like, you know what, you have 2 pieces, you have 3 pieces, that's perfectly fine. We'll start something called a limited edition collection. It's a one-off piece. Why would
Yeah.
someone who likes that technique not want to have one, and that will never be
But
made again?
no one
So
else will have. Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
didn't think that way. And
Hmm.
again, they're not at fault because everything around them tells them that you need to have a full blown, completed, cohesive, um, you know, collection to kind of show people or even take the first step of presenting it.
Right.
Um, present, presenting your work was another thing that many people are very reluctant to do because it's talking about yourself. For some
Yes.
reason, it's either because of cultural reasons or because of just situations around you. Many people are like, oh, I'm just going to create, and if someone likes it, they're just going to, they will come to me. Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Right.
You have to have a way of communicating what you want to show in your work, and it has to be through either digital medium, through a written content, through something. And it's part and parcel of being a creator, and it's something that many people are not comfortable with, and I get it because many of them are introverted, many of them have language barriers, but I think it's very, very important. You
Yeah.
have to advocate for yourself. And this was something which was sorely lacking among the people that I
Yeah.
met initially. And
Yeah.
I still bump into people. I now feel I have a little more confidence in and a manner in which I can gently persuade them to and help them understand that this is not, it's not wasted effort. It's actually very crucial.
Right, right. I mean, it's even if you don't have, if you're not introverted or you've never left a small town, just doing art is a vulnerable act. And
Yes.
so to even talk about, to go farther, try to discuss, to try to show people what you do, it's just, that can be a very scary thing
Yes.
for
Yes.
most people, So
But you
yeah,
know what they don't realize is that people are waiting to hear from them.
right?
There is something special if you tell me, I made this because of these things. And, I was walking, it could be anything. It could be the most, also, I'm digressing a little bit, but people feel like they need to have like a very exciting or a dramatic story and it has to be something sensational. And then people will sit up and listen. I don't think so.
Yeah.
We're all people, we're all simple. People are essentially simple, and simplicity is rewarded. So I don't, what you think is mundane is not mundane to me at all.
No.
So people just feel also very hindered by the fact that, oh, what I'm saying is just so boring. Like, why would I ever want to like talk about that? But I think there is some beauty in everything because, we are all existing in our own little worlds.
Right.
So anything that comes from outside that is just so refreshing. And when it is in the form of an idea that you created something out of, I think that's just spectacular.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it may seem mundane to you, but it's, new and different to us. Or if it is even the same of if it's even the same kind of things that we do, we feel connected to people who are
Correct.
like us.
Yes.
So the more you can show of yourself, the more people are actually connected to your artwork. And I found that as a working artist, that if I was actually at a show and I did a class or I did a presentation, I just sold a lot more because people felt
Yeah.
like they knew me, and then they felt like the art meant more to them. Yeah.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. I think it is about making a connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, have you examined why artists may be reticent to go down these avenues, even if you've explained this stuff to them? And if you have, were you able to find out why this aversion or lack of awareness seems prevalent amongst the artists, all these artists that you're working with? I mean, we talked a little bit about vulnerability and whatnot.
I think this has been discussed in depth. I mean, it's such a hot topic now, but I really think it boils down to the horrors of social media. Social media is just, even now, I'm glad that now, things are changing just a tad, where people are changing course a little bit, but it still to this day is all about perfection. The perfect face, the perfect life, the roles that one has to play perfectly. Just a funny thing that occurred to me, and I was like, wow, I'm going down a rabbit hole. So I have two young kids, and I went, I was watching this, and again, it's just things thrown at you. There was this TikTok of this lady talking about all the lunches that she makes for her kids, and with these elaborate designed, she had different lunch boxes for every day of the week. And
wow.
Yes, and the sandwiches were, like I was like, oh my God, and what am I doing? And I went, it took me a while to get out of that whole thing. And I was actually, to be honest, I was a little ashamed of myself, because I was like, I'm an educated person. Like, this is not, I can separate myself from, this is not reality. It's not possible.
Right.
For
Yeah.
a working mother, or not even, you don't even have to be a working mother, even just being a mother.
Yeah.
This is a hard, benchmark to kind of get to.
No.
So I think it's constantly in your face. So I think especially for creators, and like you're saying, they're so vulnerable because it's abstract. It's an idea that, only you have thought of, only you have understood that, and you have to communicate that. I think that makes them very reticent and very hesitant.
Yeah.
This whole thing about being perfect. I would say even with art galleries, it's ironic because art galleries always, it's all about like, welcoming new talent and getting, discovering the next big new thing, but they
Yeah.
have so many boundaries even to get in.
Yeah.
That has changed a little bit with COVID because I think they had to adapt.
We had to get
But
online.
earlier
Yeah.
you needed, you couldn't even step into an art gallery without having all the 10 things that they need for them to
Right.
even give you an appointment to see your work.
Right.
I mean, that at that step itself, I think so many incredible people must have just stepped back and just said, no, you know what, this is too much.
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
nowhere close to even half of what they're expecting. So why should I even, put my
Yeah.
hat in the ring?
Yeah.
So I think this thing about perfection and having to be with it all the time.
Right.
And I think that makes people really nervous. That's one angle. The other angle is, like I said, communicating your thought process. You could show something to someone and they could interpret it completely in a different way. Either that's
Sure.
going to crush you, or you just take it and you just say, oh, you know what, that's their way of again, people are scared of finding that out.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
And of course, fear of failure,
Yeah. All
something
those
new,
visual things.
the attraction of saying, you're so tempted to say no when something unknown comes your way. All of these things just, I think, hold many
Yeah.
creators, not just creators, I think just people back.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting what you're saying. Like you're seeing a really high bar for artists that we didn't really deal with so much before because of social media and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I have to agree, it can be very depressing sometimes as a creator
Yes.
to get online and seeing people do these things that you'll never be able to accomplish that. I'll never be able to do that, but you shouldn't either. And that's the thing that we tend to miss is like you shouldn't be doing what they're doing. You shouldn't be
Exactly.
reaching what they're reaching because you're going to reach whatever works for you. But it does, you're right, that high bar does make us like, why are we bothering?
Yeah, exactly. But it's
Yeah.
it's a hard lesson to learn, because
It
I
is.
I fall victim to this all the time too, even despite me consciously trying not to be sucked into this. It's very, very difficult because, it's about things that you have put your heart and soul into. And
Yeah.
if you, it's just it's isolating, and it's kind of a very lonely feeling to feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like anyone else can, take the punches for you.
Exactly.
It feels very personal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though often it isn't intended personal, but yeah, it does feel that way.
Yeah.
Do you think there are one or two avenues or skills that you would highly recommend artists acquire or hone above all else if they're going to do something that they're not comfortable with? That's something that's based, maybe it's individual circumstances or goals that would predict it, what they would do, or recommend what they would do. But what would you say are the important skills to hone for an artist these days?
I think you have to research the business a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot live in a bubble. Yes, you should not also trying to be like other people, but you have to know what the business is about, because let's face it, it is a business.
Yes.
If there's a difference between creating for an audience versus a hobby. What the people in my network are doing, it's not a hobby for them. They hope to make money off it. They hope to be successful in it, be known in their field, which means you need to know what the field is about. I think you need to know what the trends are, not because you need to follow a trend, but it could possibly put you on a path that is your own little journey, but you cannot live on an island.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to research the requirements of the business. Networking is something that I find a bit tricky, because I personally, they always say, oh, you've got to network. And yes, it's fine up to a certain point. But I think I'm in New York City. This is like the headquarters of constant networking, and it's exhausting. So I think you should also have the skill or the thing in your head to say, okay, this is what I will do. And I should get something out of that, where I learn something new, or I find a new partner, or I find a new person to source materials from. I need not be spending 24/7 doing this. So kind of knowing, if you're networking, at what point do you step away because you've got what you wanted? So, that's I think that's important. And the third thing, which is, we're talking about creativity and, letting your mind kind of run free. The reality of it is that it's not possible without some savings, without some income in, as a backup. So
Yeah.
I just by my example, I worked for 10 years in the corporate field. I had enough of my own savings. I had enough, even till date, I have certain clients who come to me now and then from my corporate life who, want me to do certain projects now and then. And I do that, because that money and those resources and that revenue is what I'm feeding into my business. And the reason I can function well and function with confidence and function from a position of strength is because I have that money.
Right.
There is this whole thing about the starving artist thing. There's so many jokes about them. And I have a very strong view about that. And it may not be a popular view, but I don't think you should put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is where, my college education, my degrees, all of that, I can fall back on that at any point in my life.
Right.
And that's important to know.
Yeah.
You should, even if you're an illustrator, you should have enough of a foundation for you to be able to do something that gives you a regular income stream so that, at least your mind is not burdened by that thought. Because I don't know how you can create if you're worrying about paying the rent for next
Right.
month.
Exactly. So have a safety net, which isn't necessarily what most people think about when they get into artwork. Because
Yes.
for a lot of people, it's a very slow process. I mean, a lot of people that you're meeting, it was passed
Yeah.
down through the family or generations of people. And then a lot of people, like that I know have ran into it later in life, or
Yeah.
they had tried early and then they came back to it later. And so it ends up being a slow process, but you still need to plan for having a safety net in order to be able to take those steps that
Yes.
that you want to take, without being concerned that you're not, what happens if it goes wrong? What are you going to fall back on? Because that could
Ex-
stop you from doing what it is that you want to do or feel that you need to do, right?
And, I feel a lot of people push back when I say this, but I think for me, I feel very strongly about it because that's what I'm doing right now on a day-to-day basis. There are some, because this is a very unstable business. This is not,
Yeah.
this is not a dry cleaning business, which has, a certain, you can plan ahead. You know what's going to happen next. This is a path that I've chosen that is very unstable. I want to stay nimble. I want my platform to stay dynamic and not be bogged down. For those reasons, I am doing exactly what I'm saying. I do have an alternate income stream that if I ever need to fall back on, I can go back in a flash.
Right.
And I think creators should do that. And it can be in the field that you're in.
And
I don't mean to say you have to like spend a lot of money and go to college and get a business. I don't mean that. But something that, teach somewhere or, have your own private, like workshops or something.
right.
It's
Right.
also like it gives you a boost of confidence because, I think it just makes you a little more fearless.
Yeah. Is that something that you work with your artists on, or encourage at least these
We,
people that you
I
work with?
definitely do encourage because, and I always, whenever I speak to someone new, we always start with a phone call and I always say that, listen, this is not a business of guarantees. There are no
Right.
guarantees in this business. We will work together if we have the same, we're on the same page in terms of the process, in terms of what I want to do for you and what you want to get out of me. So this is a very kind of an abstract collaboration in that sense. I'm not giving you a check and you're not giving, it's not that way. So I do
Right.
try to encourage, especially people who say these things, and it scares me because they're like, oh, I've been an architect for like 15 years and I'm just going to quit my job and I'm going to now. Yes, if you have enough of a security plan, a safety net, sure. But if not, then I would try to nudge them to kind of, you can always do it. I feel you
Build
can do
something
it.
in.
It's
Yeah.
it's not possible that you would not be able to create and, also it also keeps you connected with the real world. You're not also, kind of in your little studio all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
just
You do feel like you are in your own world, yeah, which can be problematic too,
yeah,
but
yeah. Because
yeah.
it all ties in with then you feeling more hesitant to talk about people, talk to people, tell them about who you are, because you're again in your own world of one. But
Yeah.
when you're,
Mhm.
when you're in the same field, but you're say working in a job, there is an exchange of ideas. I mean, man is a social animal, so you've got
Very
to accept
right.
that.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So, yeah, it's one of the reasons I do things like this. I think artists need to get more input from the outside. So, because otherwise you are
Yes.
in a vacuum and it can be very stifling and
Yeah.
can even make your work very, very stale as well. So, um, now talking about one's process so an artist's audience or customers can get to know them better seemed very important to you in our conversation. So, how does talking about one's process, do you think, help them connect with the people they're trying to reach? And are there other advantages to consider as well in terms of either whether it's speaking or writing or, putting themselves out there on video?
I think the biggest thing is kind of like a map into your mind, which, like I said, people are very interested in that. They want to know your story. They want to know what inspired you. And when you are vulnerable, and when you don't, again, people again feel like, oh, we should just talk about the good stuff. I think as creators, it's a process filled with angst. There's like the good, the bad, mostly bad.
Or things
but
that we worry are bad. Yeah.
but it's, I think if you speak about them, uh someone who's looking at your work and happens to hear you speaking about it, may can relate to that in some weird manner. It doesn't have to be that, oh, I was trying to think of an idea for 10 days and nothing came to my mind, but someone could think through on the same lines and say, you know what, yes, I was struggling through this for so long, and you made a breakthrough, and look what you've made.
Yeah.
That just brings you closer to that person. So first of all, it's an insight into your thoughts, and everyone is interested in knowing about each other's, kind of just your little things in your head. I think people
Yeah.
are inherently very curious. So it's
If
a
we weren't,
nice
there wouldn't be
way.
so much reality TV.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, it doesn't change. The plot stays the same. It's just
Right,
different
right,
people.
yeah. But it is, you're
And
right. It's all those little things, right?
yeah,
That are
this,
different than
because
ours.
it's not a linear connection. Or you had a bad experience. I'm not going to have the same bad experience, but I think I know how you felt. And when you made the breakthrough, that feeling of, that triumph.
Yeah.
Um, it's nice to share that. And I think your passion comes through, your vulnerability comes through. Um, it also is a way which most people don't realize. You will find your people when you speak,
Right? Yeah.
one way
Yeah.
or the other. You will find your tribe. I mean, that's why kids are amazing, because they seamlessly move through friendship so beautifully, because they
True.
just
Yeah.
always they're just always open and transparent, and they're just themselves all the time. They're not hiding their
Right?
feelings.
Yeah.
So you will
Yeah.
find your people. And I think also, not only will you find your own people, you will also get a more defined perspective for yourself. I
Yes.
like this. I don't like this. I don't agree with what he said. But I think this argument that he made is interesting. So maybe I can use that.
Right.
I think
So
those kinds of things are crucial.
so really finding out more about yourself in the
Yeah,
process.
exactly. By
Yeah.
listening to other people
Yeah.
while they are talking about themselves or their experiences. So it's kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a very like I don't know how you say it. It's a
Synergistic.
mishmash. It's a mishmash of, people's experiences.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I am as you're talking about this, I'm just thinking about the processes that, like, from both sides, as someone who views and loves art or someone who's creating. The more we talk about things, the better we understand in general. I mean, it's
Yeah.
general tenet. But I do think, like, the more that I spent time uh, putting together classes or writing books or writing
Yeah.
articles, the more I really got to understand what I knew and what I understood and what I liked to be doing just by the process of trying to explain it to somebody else. It's like in therapy, they tell you to write things down, even though it's in your
Yeah,
head, because when you have to put it down in black and white, you have to explain it and you have to think it through and really
exactly.
understand it in order to find the words for it. And as visual artists, sometimes that's hard because words aren't what people work with
Right.
necessarily. And but having to do it, it
Yeah.
just pushes you to really think through what it is that you're doing and why, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Great. I love that part of the conversation. Yeah. That's always been a really important thing for me to spend time understanding yourself because you can just keep making things. You can make all the things that you love, but if you understand it, it can really help direct you to like
It
really
all
more
it also,
joyful work.
brings another layer to the whole thing.
Hmm.
It's more nuanced because, and maybe everyone will get it, maybe no one will get it, but you got it. So I think it's great to be in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the things that you can discover in the process. I mean, it really can push you in new directions, just to just understand yourself better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you have any advice for artists that can't or really aren't comfortable with being more open and reaching out through these avenues that we're discussing? Do you think there's ways that people can become more comfortable or small steps that they can take to get them to the point where they could talk more about themselves and their work?
You just mentioned one of the simplest things, which is to just write stuff down.
Yeah.
You don't need to speak. You don't need to be in a group of people. You can just write stuff down. I think that, like, exactly the way you beautifully explained it, just as you're writing, your mind just gets more and more clear. So that's the simplest thing. I would, a couple of other things, I think you need to find partners. When I
Mhm.
say partners, it's not someone who's doing your job, it's someone who's adding to what you are doing. So it can be platforms that can be a connecting partner between you and someone that you and your audience, your potential audience. And then surround yourself with people who are invested in you. I think that
Yeah.
is it it's worth the time and the effort
Yeah.
because all the people that I have in my network right now, I always tell them it's not, this is not like we collaborate once and okay, goodbye, by March 30th we're done. It's
Yeah.
a partnership for life. That's how I view it. Because I mean, you're going to evolve as you get older or as you kind of pivot lanes. Um, when you have someone who's invested in you, who will take away that part which may be challenging for you, say speaking for yourself, it's already a good feeling because you're free of that. And
Hmm.
you found someone who's equally passionate about what you are doing. And it's not out of, it's not an altruistic thing. I am
Sure.
also getting something out of it,
Yeah.
so it's the roles are very clear. But if you are unable to advocate for yourself, I think it's good to have people who will do it for you in the
Right.
best possible manner because everyone has a skill set. Like I said, I don't paint and I don't make jewelry, but I think I do have a sense of what would be great for this particular person. And again, it's not me telling them this is one, two, three, you have to do that. It's me saying, I think these are possibilities. Have you thought through them? Let's try them out. What do you think?
Yeah.
So it is a collaboration. It is a collaborative space
Right.
through and
Yeah.
through from the beginning till the end. There is no agenda. There is no like mandate. Like we need this by this. It's nothing like that. It is a
Yeah.
partnership that is based on trying to make it a win-win situation.
Yeah. Are there specific things that you ask your artists to do to put themselves out there? Do things that you ask them to write up or interviews or anything that you are recommending for your artists right now?
I so we have a bunch of avenues that we've launched over the past few years, where they can express as little or as much as they want. So for example, there's something called an artist spotlight profile that we do every month, where we go really in depth into who they are, right from what were their early influences, what's the kind of medium that they like working with. And many people, it's shocking, but many people have never ever spoken about that.
Oh,
So I
wow.
really like to
Yeah.
go back in time and have them dig up those kind of factors that inspired them. So I would say Yeah, that is the artist spotlight is something that I really love. I always also love doing video interviews. Not everyone's comfortable with them, and I'm totally fine with that. But when I think it's for reasons where, like someone will say, and this happened with she's one of our she's one of my favorite absolute artisans. She's a young lady from Japan, and she makes like these minimalist designs, jewelry designs. I call them brutal beauties because it's just straight, stark lines, and she makes fantastic jewelry. And she said, "No, I'm not going to do a video interview because I don't speak English very well."
Oh,
And I really wanted her to speak, so I just said, we'll try two things. Why don't you write what you want to write in Japanese, and we'll try to translate that, or you speak in Japanese and we will translate that. We will do something, but I
right.
want you to just say what you feel like saying. I thought the interview would end in 10 minutes. It went on for 45 minutes, and
Yeah.
she sent me such a sweet message after that, and I could see, as the interview progressed, the smile got wider. She was
Yeah.
looser. She was like, because it was in her own language, I had taken off the burden of having to be really good in English and the
Yeah.
grammar and this and that. And I think it was the one time I really pushed someone, because I really wanted her. It was not for the it was for myself. I wanted to understand what she was about. And that was not possible any other way, because we were exchanging emails and that was all about the business. It wasn't really about who she was.
Yeah.
But that was the one example that I feel proud of, that I got
Yeah.
someone to really open up. And till date, I feel like that was a very successful moment for me, because for her, she felt so happy, and she was free. I felt like she was just like letting go after
Yeah.
all
Well,
that
see,
hesitation.
that reminds me of your hot air balloon story, because
Yes.
it's like she didn't know what would happen. She was
Yeah.
fearful and uncertain, and we always are. The unknown is the thing that's scariest. And once you know, even if it's not a good thing, it's much easier to handle. But she didn't know. But once you do it and you find out what it is, and you find out it's not hard, and you find out you can do it, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And it's such a great feeling to put yourself out there and
Yeah.
accomplish that.
And one of the things I feel with formal, structured organizations, say a really well-known art gallery, I'm just giving an example, and I know they have their own fantastic ways of curating art. The Met in New York City is one of my all-time favorite
Oh,
museums. I
yeah.
mean, I could go there every day and never be bored. Like, it's one of those
Right.
places,
Yeah.
and it is a formal, structured organization. They have
Hmm.
a very thorough process and their own process of curating art. But I just feel that when it comes to like individuals, it's hard for them to have the time, maybe because they're so big.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be that space where people could just come and not unburden, but just be themselves. And then maybe in the process, find something that they're excited with, and potentially find a customer or an audience that would just be like completely invested. Because I don't know how other people, I think most people do function like this, where if they like something, they really stick to it. If I
Yeah.
like a form of art, or there are sculptors that I really like, and I feel like I, even after all these years, I still love what they do, is
Yeah.
because I'm just so, I don't know, I just feel something for that particular piece. And if someone had me define it, I would not be able to define it, but
Right.
I can just
Yeah.
say, oh, I really love it. I
Yeah.
don't know how
Yeah.
else to
What we say most of the time, right?
yes, but I don't know how to say that beyond, I don't have elaborate words to describe that, but
Right.
I just think that it's nice to have those options. I wanted to be the kind option, for lack of a better word. So I kind of started the interview with this Japanese designer saying, we can just do 5 minutes.
Right.
It's not live. Let's do 5 minutes. Why don't you speak in Japanese? Um, and then whenever you want to like stop it, just tell me and I'll stop. And she never stopped. And that's when I realized that, what, she's been waiting to do this. But I think she would not have, one, if I had not pushed her a little bit, two, if I
Yeah.
had not given her the option to quit.
Yeah.
If I
Right.
had if I
Uh-huh.
had said that, no, you know what, I'm so sorry, this has to be 45 minutes. We have to cover these 6 questions, which also sometimes it comes across when you're speaking to people that you're pitching to or studios that you're pitching to, where they're like, oh, it has to be this way or nothing.
Right. Yes.
And then again,
Yeah.
it's like, it's scary. So I
Yeah.
think I gave her the option. I gave her an out. I said, no, if it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. That's fine. We'll just do it. I just said, we'll come up with something. Don't worry about that. But
Yeah.
if you can just try this out, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, and that's a great tool always. That I used to do creativity coaching, and people are like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to do that." And it's like, no matter whether it's like you don't know if you want to do a particular thing because it feels risky, or you're just not feeling like sitting down and doing your work. 2 minutes. You give yourself 2 minutes, and your brain will shift gears, and then next thing you know. But I love the whole idea. If you're afraid of something, just give it a few minutes. Just do it for a few minutes. And find out, if it is really that.
It may not work
scary.
that day. It may not work that day.
Yeah,
it may work some other day. So it's fine. It's okay. But at least you did that. And no one will admit it, but you actually do feel good that you did something that was just so bizarre to you.
To you, yeah.
But you did it. And
just the effort itself is an accomplishment. You're like, look, I tried it, didn't like it.
Let's move on. It's fine. No one's testing anyone. That's what people forget. I think they're just like, oh my God, no one has the time to actually judge you.
Right? Yeah. No, they can't keep all that and everything else in their head at the same time.
100%.
So. Yeah. So for a lot of people who have a hard time doing this, then your kind of recommendation is to try a couple small things, do something for a short period of time, do something that no one else is going to see, it sounds like, the idea of just writing it down for yourself, videoing yourself if you wanted to, any of that stuff, because all that stuff can be done these days in the comfort of your own home with nobody else.
Absolutely. And you don't have to look perfect. You don't have to sound perfect. You don't have to have perfect grammar. If you are truly, all you need to do is communicate in a manner that you're most comfortable with. And I think people, it's very refreshing to see that. I put a bunch of like these webcast clips on, on our social media channels, and we do like little snippets. And no one's in makeup. No one's like sitting in like an amazing studio with, like the perfect background. But I think that's appealing, because all that other stuff is not important. What you're saying is important.
Yeah. You just got to get past that. But that's like, we kind of think of that first. We're like, okay, what are we going to wear?
Exactly.
It's like, forget that.
And it is all these modern things, like, how am I looking on screen? Do I look, the face that you have to make on a Zoom call? I mean, all of those things is just...
We're so self-conscious. Yeah. It's terrible. Leave us alone. We're artists. We must go well, it sounds like you've really helped your artists at Let's Create think beyond the usual modes of promotions and even production. Can you give us some of the examples or stories about your experience helping artists broaden their approach for their work or ideas for creating their body of work?
So one of the examples, I mean, my favorite example, which I just gave you, was, getting the Japanese lady designer to just open up, which was, for her, the video interview really was a breakthrough. When it comes to, there are a couple of other, there's one other example I can think of. It's a lady from Ecuador, and she makes sustainable jewelry from recovered silver that they find from mines. And she upcycles like caps of plastic bottles, and uses all of those to make, if you see her pieces, you would just not know that this was the source of her idea. And she's not, she told me right from the get-go, and I did not push her, because I know that she was just not ready for that. She didn't want to write about herself. She didn't want to kind of like speak about herself. So I would say that for her, we just said, listen, we will tell your story. If you give us permission, we will tell your story. So that's another way, this goes back to what I was saying, is finding partners who can be kind of your agent of whatever that you are thinking of. And she was completely on board with that. And I told her, I said, listen, this is how we start. This is not how it needs to end. And, this is not necessarily how, if tomorrow you come back and say, I want to do something different, now I want to do the artist spotlight, my doors are always open. So it doesn't work. You also have to kind of read the room. Like, I knew that she was not someone who I didn't want her to hesitate and just step back from the whole thing altogether because
Right.
she was so
Don't want to scare her
uncomfortable.
off.
So
Yeah.
I had to kind of strike a balance on that front.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think this was, but for her, having her three, and she was like, "Oh, I only have three pieces. What do I do? And how do we make this work?" And I said, "That's fine. We can make it happen. We'll present it under the limited edition collection. You don't have to have 10 pieces." For her, that was a big step.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it works on a case-to-case basis. Um, my hope is to always, like I said, keep the doors open, keep the channels of communication open, because my hope is that the more people that we add to the network, they're with me for life, and with me for life in terms of not having to adhere to what they did with me earlier. They can
Right.
always change and say, I really don't like this anymore. I'm not this person anymore. Now I'm this person. What can you do to help me out? So, I would say that in terms of stories, the Japanese designer and the Ecuadorian designer, I realized that there were different ways to kind of help them. And that was my way. And I think they both happy about that. And, now I feel like it's like, it took me a long time to get the lady from Ecuador to agree. There was a language barrier. We had to use Google Translate to speak and things like that. But now I get I get a message from her once in a while saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm thinking of this," which I know for her is huge. For her to
Yeah.
send me a message and say, "What do you think? Can this be, can we do this?" And I know that, I feel so good about that. So
To be more
these are,
proactive
I
for
feel like
herself. Yeah.
it's not the big wins. It's the small wins that add up to make a big win.
So true.
And I actually cherish the small wins a lot more. It's
Right.
again very personal because it's just between me and that person. No one is watching it.
Yeah.
It's not something that I can, it's not something that you would, post on Instagram and say, "Oh my God, I made like a sale of $100 million." It's not that kind of
Right.
thing. But
Right.
it's more like she had a great day, I had a great day, and it was such a nice end to the whole thing that I was trying to get done. So I think it's the
Yeah.
small wins.
But
And every person that I work with has a little story in that sense, like little
yeah.
wins between us.
Yeah, and those are the things that you remember. I mean, not that you don't remember if you made
Yeah,
$100,000 or
yeah, yeah,
$100 million, or
yeah,
that would
yeah. Of
definitely be
course.
memorable. But but the things that we remember from the stuff that we do, like when I think about when I was publishing the magazine, some of my most memorable things were very, well, somewhat small things, like just getting two artists together and collaborating that had never met before, simply because we were working together on something in the magazine.
Yeah.
Or there was a woman whose husband passed away, and she like was bedridden pretty much for like 6 months until my magazine showed up, and that's what got her out. For her
Wow.
to tell me that was like, oh, but they're
That's
kind of just
huge.
little, that wasn't me making a magazine. That wasn't about the process. That wasn't about the money, because
Yeah.
magazines are not money makers. But but it was about the connections and the people and the effect that we're having on other people. And
I
we do, as
agree.
artists and entrepreneurs. I mean, that is really the thing at the end of the day that I think that we treasure the most,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's why I want to kind of keep it, it's held me in good stead to be slow and build on the what you say, the mission of the brand, and not kind
Mhm.
of get sucked into all the other things because they are shiny and they're bright and they are very tempting, but it's actually not. It's pretty shallow.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
if I
Yeah.
stick to the core of what I want to do, it may take me way longer than maybe someone else who has a similar thought or who has a different way of going about it. But I actually feel like I would be happier in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's my own, I would say, lesson for my, I like
For
my,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah,
And
I don't
I
care
wish.
if it takes time.
No, yeah, no, it's true. I absolutely agree. It's, yeah. Now I want to, it's kind of backing up a little bit, but
Mhm.
explain to us how your artists are brought on board. How do you find them, and what's the process for bringing them in? And then maybe more clearly explain what it is that you do for them.
Okay.
What is the
Yeah.
partnership?
So, as I said earlier, the initial first group of 10 artisans was a very organic find because it happened through my travels. We launched in June 2019. And initially, we launched it as a shop, as an e-shop, just like many other platforms. The only difference was that my collections and the designers that I had curated truly had refreshing ideas and very interesting designs. What happened was, and this is where, I know I've said a lot of bad things about social media, but there's also the other flip side where the other side of it, where it just grew by word of mouth. So by the end of December, by January 2020, we had grown by a decent number, and we had, signed up for all these in-person events. We were going to go, kind of literally travel the country and show people stuff, art galleries. Of course, COVID hit, and, the world came to a stop, and it was paralyzing. I have to say, the first few weeks, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, wow, is this a sign that this was the worst idea that I ever had? But, what happened was, it actually turned out to be a blessing for me, because I was forced to pivot and I was forced to change the way I thought. So then I was like, this cannot just be a shop. I'm talking about it being a collaborative space. How is it collaborative if I'm just showing, something online with like 5 scarves and like 4 rings? Like, how is that different? So, we launched something called, because we had all these products with us that we were going to show at in-person events, we launched something called Ready to Ship. And these were custom one-off pieces. But the thing was, if you liked it, we would ship it within 2 hours.
Yeah.
So we did that. I mean, this was all keeping in mind delays because of COVID and things like that. But we kind of changed track, and we said, you know what, we can't travel anywhere, but we can actually ship it to you. If you like it, we can do it right now. So that was Ready to Ship. Like I said, I've spoken at length about limited edition, where people came to us and they said, now we're stumped, because, we were in the process of making this big collection, and now I have nowhere to source materials from. I'm locked in my house, but I have 4 pieces ready. How can you help? So a lot of these things, a lot of these new artisans joined us because they heard of us, and I was constantly having conversations. There was nothing else to do at home.
Right.
So I would, anytime someone would, send me a message on Instagram or send me an email, I would just say, just get on a call. Let's tell me what you're doing, and let me find. So limited edition collection, ready to wear, ready to ship, artist spotlight, the video interviews, all of these were launched in 2020. And I think it was word of mouth, and organically we grew a lot based on that. 2021, we decided to kind of step back gingerly into in-person events. Didn't go very well. So we again, because the world was just coming back, and I know that New York wasn't ready at that point, because I was going to start here, wasn't ready.
So hard,
So we had to push it, but that helped us actually strengthen all these other avenues that we had launched. I think if we had again jumped back into in-person, we would not have enough time to create a strong foundation. So I think people liked, or the artisans liked, the fact that they could pick and choose what they wanted. They could do it at their own pace and their own time. There was a designer who had 3 pieces, and she had 3 pieces with us up until 2022. And then she said, guess what? I've completed the collection now. And I said, okay, great. It's that perfect. We're just going to. So I think the flexibility and the freedom, that kind of people got to hear of that from other creators. Typically, like I said, I work with a very small team, and we're very on top of everything. I think that's the beauty of being with just 4 or 5 people. The minute someone, asks us something or asks us a question, or even whether it's a buyer or we immediately able to respond. And I think that's helped me grow the network faster, because like I said, my first step is always no emails, no nothing. Let's just get on a call. Let's have a quick chat. And many a times it doesn't work the first time around. In fact, there were quite a few people. I feel the network would have grown faster in 2020 if it had not been COVID, but it was. But many of the people just said, oh, I hear you, but I'm not ready right now. And I said, okay, that's fine. But keep in touch. Like, tell me what you're up to, because, I would keep up that dialogue. And then a year later, some of them came back. So it's grown like I said, very slowly, very organically, word of mouth. We do a lot of social media promotions, because my whole point is to try to show the world all these amazing ideas and creations that have been made, and they don't have time for that because they're busy creating. And
Right.
that's my whole thing, because I'm like, you are good at this and I'm good at this, so you do your part and I'll do my best to showcase you in the best possible manner. So I think it's more or less people just reaching out to us. We keep the channels very open. And again, I never had these kind of targets where I was like, oh, I've launched in 2019 with 10 people. By 2020, I need to have 50 people. By 2020, like I started off not wanting that, and I'm still very hardcore about not having those kinds of targets. I think my targets more are in terms of what more can I do for you? What am I
Mhm.
missing? What pain point am I not addressing that'll help you just be free to create, and then for us to kind of get you to the right buyer or the right audience.
Right. Yeah. Very artist focused. That's just refreshing. That's not
Yeah,
usually how it goes. Yeah.
yeah. And then,
Yeah.
it doesn't work for most, because I think there are also, and no fault of this, there are many people who are like, oh, but how soon will you sell this? And I always say I don't have an answer, because I'm not going to tell you that it's going to sell in the first month or the
Well,
next six
no one,
months. I
yeah.
have no
Gallows not gonna tell
idea.
you that either. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just, because these pieces are original, they're unique, they need to have their own kind of buyer. So I have no idea who it is. My job is to make sure that it's seen, it's celebrated, and the person behind the creation is, the spotlight is on them.
So does Let's Curate basically operate as a marketplace, or is it kind of
It's a
marketplace and it seems
marketplace,
agent?
and I would say it's a marketplace and a resource center. I would call
Okay.
it that. It's where you can, as a creator, dig in and say, I like this, let's do these two things, or I'm just going to do this and I'll do the other thing later. So I'm
As
giving
far as
them
like
all the
sales,
possible options. Yes.
sales options. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
giving you all the possible options. You pick and choose what you want, or you say, okay, you know what? We won't do any of these things, but we'll participate in an in-person event. So in 2022 and this year, we finally went back and did our first in-person event at Art Expo, where we presented six, ceramists and painters, textile designers from 6 countries. So last year was 3 people, this time was 6 people. We're again participating next year. So we're kind of slowly kind of dipping our
Building
toes
that
into
as an option.
in-person events.
Mhm. Okay.
And it's COVID and all of this really helped, I feel, because it
Yeah.
it really helped me kind of fine tune what the platform was supposed to be. If
Right.
COVID would not have happened, I think I would have done the usual thing of making a shop online and then just going market to market and trying to sell these things.
Yeah.
But I think it forced me to kind of question what I really wanted the brand to be. And the brand is about, connecting with, being a connecting partner between two, interested parties.
Yeah. So how is it that you bring buyers to this kind of marketplace for your artists?
So, like I said, we've done a lot of these in-person events. We actually have an in-house exhibition where we would be doing pop-up events. We partner with, for example, in later this year, we are partnering with New York City Jewelry Week, which is like an entire week of celebrating independent designers. So this is the first year we'll be partnering with them. It's in line with many of the other things that we're doing in the exhibition. We're trying to get mentors. We're going to start, some mentoring sessions, things like that. So hopefully all of this helps out. We're also trying to partner with art galleries because now, since we have such a broad network of people, I feel like if there is fine art gallery that's looking for a specific kind of a painter, we can always be the person saying, we have this person. What
Yeah.
do you think?
Yeah.
And I never accept a no, because it's never a no. A no could always, it's always like,
Yeah.
let's get to a point where it could be a yes. It's a no now, but what do you need for
Yeah.
it to work?
Right. Right.
So I think I approach it that way. But those are some of the new things that I would want to incorporate. Mentoring
Yeah.
sessions, and having industry experts like kind of guide my artisans to a higher level of expertise, things like that.
Yeah. And mentoring sessions. This is something I don't think I've ever talked with anybody about for artists.
Yeah.
What kind of mentoring are you envisioning for your artists?
Like I said, just probably having, and this is what NYCJW is going to help us with, hopefully, where, they have people from who specialize in, say, certain kind of jewelry technique. So if you're a
Okay.
metalsmith and you're making metal jewelry, you'll be, I would like to connect them with the person who has their own line, who's been in the industry for a long time, to probably do a one-on-one session or have a workshop where there are multiple people, learning from them. And it's a multi-day workshop. It can be in person. I hope someday all of these things can be in person, because I think
Hmm.
there's a joy to kind of being in the same room with people, but
Yeah.
currently we're still not at that stage. So mentoring would mean just um, academic education, but also hopefully some kind of practical internships, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just want to clarify because yeah, mentoring is something that's not usually talked about in the artist world so much. It's a
Yeah,
very business oriented thing, and
right.
but I guess we would have like journeying or journeyman back in the day, where you
Yeah,
connect with somebody. So it sounds like a very proactive marketplace is what you've developed
I
for the
agree.
artist and a partnership with
Yes,
the artist, which
yes.
just, yeah, I just love that idea because a lot of our services out there are just like, we're here for you and you put your stuff out there, but you're on your own. And
Yeah,
at least this way you're not on your own, which, yeah,
exactly.
does give you a lot
Exactly.
more time to create. So wonderful. So now let's just do our closing questions. Um, from what you've been doing on a personal level, what do you think is the most impactful lesson that you've gained from working with these artists and the business of Let's Create?
I think the thing that has always helped me is wearing my heart on my sleeve. I think if you are open, others will be too. And I'm always like, I literally like bare my heart and soul when I'm speaking to someone, because I want them to know that I'm speaking to them because I am interested in them and I am interested in their story. And this is a business. Yes, it's a business, but it's beyond that. And I'm trying to kind of get to that. Be transparent, I would say, being transparent, being honest, and not trying to be a spin doctor where you're trying to be like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to do this for you and I'm going to do that and it's going to be amazing and you're going to be a success in 6 months. That really is pretty hollow. And I think everyone sees through that. And I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And I think if someone spoke to me that way, it just doesn't
Yeah.
work. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think, I just feel like,
Yeah.
and also kind of, the other lesson that I learned for the first few times, I was like, oh God, that call was like a disaster because it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. But I didn't realize that what does not work now may work out later.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me, because I I never feel that any call has gone to waste, because I've at least, opened one channel of communication with that person, and like it may not have worked out this year, it may work out in 6 months. Um, so there's never an end point. We're
Yeah.
speaking about creators. I mean, creativity is kind of limitless, right? So you can't have
Right.
one conversation and be like, oh my God, we are never going to work together. This is the end of the road. It's never like that. It's just a
Yeah.
dialogue. So I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
had to learn that too, because I had to kind of, I think, get out of my corporate mindset a little bit, where it's about, have you closed the deal? Is it done? And then it's done,
You're
then it's a
right.
success.
Right. Yeah.
But this is not that way. It's a success just because you have actually made a new, I would say, a new connection, and maybe it'll go somewhere, maybe it won't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just being completely honest and just knowing that the road keeps going. It'll end when you want it to end.
Yeah. So it sounds like your lessons are primarily on just being genuine and
Yes,
hopeful and open to
correct.
possibilities. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 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 So what now we talked a little bit about this already in terms of you feeding your muse by traveling and stuff.
Yeah.
Does that feed your entrepreneurial spirit, or what kind of things do you do to keep the concepts fresh for what you bring to Let's Curate?
I think travel is like it's like the big picture idea, in terms of like, oh, that's really going to be, that's the big idea. You travel and then, you unlock your mind, you come up with something fresh. But I think on a day-to-day basis, I wish I could, but I can't travel every day. So there has to
Yeah,
be something
right.
that, that inspires me on a day-to-day basis. And to be honest, the thing that I do or try to do is have one new conversation a day with someone completely new.
Oh, that's
And
great.
it need not be with someone related to Let's Curate, or, it could just be someone who is in a completely different field.
Yeah.
But I like the idea, and I think the more I do this, the more rewarding it is to just strike up a conversation, and just do once. It's like the scary thing for the day, to kind of
Yeah.
go to someone and just say, oh, I mean, I don't mean like just walk up on the street and talk to
Right,
someone,
right.
not like
That
a
is a little
stalker,
bit.
but but in a any kind of a situation,
Uh-huh.
it's nice to have like one new thing that you did every day. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just a series of things that you do on repeat.
Right, right,
So
exactly. And not fall
it's
into
nice to
that.
do that. It's nice to like speak to, I take the subway all the time, and this is, I mean,
Right.
I love New York City for this because it's filled with all kinds of people,
Oh,
good,
and you're
bad,
right
and
next to
the
them.
weird.
Yep.
But it's funny how much people will speak to you, and how nice people are when you obviously approach them the right way. You're on a long journey, and you're just sitting next to each other, and one little thing can lead to a really nice conversation.
Interesting conversation. Yeah.
I would not have done that a few years ago, but I think it's nice to just get out of your comfort zone, and if you, under the right circumstances, just try to do one new thing. So for me, it could be one new conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you'll
That's
never meet
great.
that person again, but
No,
it's just a
but
nice thing.
yeah, right, exactly. No, I think that's great. That's yeah. I mean, sometimes we can't get out and do anything truly new, but having a new conversation, I love that. I don't think I've ever thought about that. So add that to my list of new things that we can do every day. So now, you've talked a little bit about the ideas of success. Can you give me your definition of success for you? And then maybe your definition of success, obviously different for every artist, but kind of how do you define that they're doing well on your platform?
For me, the definition keeps changing. It's a moving target. So earlier, early on, just right out of college, it was success for me was being a valued person at an organization, helping
Hmm.
the organization succeed, and me doing a good job on that front. That was, to me, the parameter for success. Then I felt like, wow, this is great, because I turned like a seemingly like crazy abstract idea into a reality in 2019. That for me at that point was like a huge feeling of triumph. I felt so good,
Yeah.
when I launched that. And I remember I was all by myself, and I had just been speaking to this web designer. There were just three people, and she was like, it's ready. When do you want to launch it? And I was like, okay, should I do it now? And then I was like, no, let's just do it now. And we went live, and I was all by myself, and it was such a great feeling. It was like, you build something and you let it out into the world, and
Yeah.
it was incredible. And now, then the next part came where it was like, wow, not only have I made it into a reality, it's turning out to be a viable business slowly but steadily.
Yeah.
So that again was I was like, wow, that's my new idea of success. Now I think, long term, because the path is somewhat clear. I know what I need to do. The way I do it is going to change. But I know now that it's building relationships with people whom we are bound with, like a common thread that binds us, and it's all about creating together.
Yeah.
It could be creating a product, it could be creating a process, it could be creating a relationship. I think that to me, and that for me would be like a lifelong search.
Yeah.
But if I'm getting closer to that, but it's also like I don't need to do it now or in 5 years or in 10 years. It's something that it's a little abstract, but I think that would be my overall idea.
That it's working towards that, and that in
Yes,
itself is
yes,
success.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then for your artist, do you have like parameters that you're like, now you're successful on this platform. This is working for
For me,
you,
of
for us.
course, brass tacks, like having great sales, giving them great feedback about their products, helping them find an avenue that's a great fit for that person.
Mhm.
Because like I said, what would work for one person may not work for something else. So if we find something that works really well and translates into either them, getting a new client or getting a new, I would say, a gallery to work with, or at least giving them the idea that, hey, you know what, my products were seen in this editorial magazine in London, so maybe I can just go to my local magazine and just say, guess what, I got a feature in this magazine, like why don't we, things like that.
Yeah.
I think those would be some ways for me to define success for my people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting. It's just so interesting to be talking to somebody on the other side
Yeah,
rather than the
yeah.
art. But this is what I did, and this is the people I deal with, and these are the people that tried to help me sell my work, and that didn't work out or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I've been
know.
here from the other side, yeah, and
Yeah.
hear your view on their success and just working for them so hard. That's wonderful. Um, so as we wrap up, why don't you tell us where to find Let's Curate, and we'll get some links, and how to contact you if anyone is interested and they think they
Mm-hmm.
might have a partnership possibility with you, and any new events or news or anything that you want to talk about that people can check out.
Sure. So the website is letscurate.com,
Mhm.
LETSCURATE, and our Instagram handle is lets_curate. Email or Instagram is the easiest way to reach us. We're very responsive.
Okay.
The company email address is info@letscurate.com. In terms of upcoming events or news, an exciting piece of news is that for the first time, we got our designs are now being showcased at a retail store in Soho, in New York City. So
Nice.
if designers want to have their pieces seen in a physical store, this has been many years in the making, but it finally came true this year. So I'm very thrilled about that. That's the big news for the first half of the year. So now we can stock our, designers' products at a physical store, which is in a prominent shopping district where lots of tourists come in, and there's a lot of footfall. So that would hopefully translate to more sales. The latter half of the year, we, as I mentioned briefly earlier, we are launching an in-house international exhibition. It's called Opulent Handmade Treasures, and the theme is maximalism. So it's kind of like go big or go
Go
bold,
big.
and we're doing
Yeah.
a bunch of things to showcase designers and participants in that. One of them would be, our partnership with NYCJW. They are going to be helping us out. We're going to be partnering with Klimt, which is a very prominent um, platform that focuses on contemporary jewelers. Pop-up, there's going to be a weekend pop-up event, the retail store showcase. Of course, we will be featuring all our designers on podcasts and video interviews, and much more. So it's a combination of like 7 things if you're part of that exhibition. And there's going to be
Wow.
an interactive,
Yeah.
immersive. So we're going to do a hybrid exhibition plus an in-person exhibition. And this will be October to December this year, 2023. So
Yeah.
we're working hard towards that.
Yeah, just layers of stuff you have going for your artists. That's just,
Yes.
I love that. Just supporting the artists and really giving them options and different avenues to get their work out there. That's
Yes.
fantastic. So, well, is there anything else that we haven't covered that listeners might want to know or that you wanted to put out there before we wrap it up?
Um, I would just like to say that, if you're scared about something, it is something you should actually do, because
Right?
that's probably you're on the cusp of something important, good or bad, that time will tell. But
Yeah.
I really think it's good to leap. And once in a while, I mean, obviously keeping in mind all, I'm not, promoting any kind of like dangerous things,
Totally
but
crazy.
I think
Right.
in terms of ideology, it's good to do that. And I think it helps to find the right kind of people, and you will know who the right kind of people are to help you on the journey. It's not a solo journey. My platform is where it is only because I have so many people with me. So it's almost
Hmm.
like I started off on the path by myself, and then I got a few more people, and then I got a few more, and now I'm like walking on this massive road with so many, like, it's just when I try to create an image, that's the image that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Like 2019 to 2023, it was like one pair of footsteps, and now it's like so many.
Yeah, that's
So
wonderful.
you need to have a community, and for that you need to be proactive.
Yeah,
You take this, if you it's like they say, if you start walking, the road will open up. So if you don't start walking, nothing's going to
you're not
change.
going to go anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very wise words. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for spending the time with us today. That was just a lovely
Yes,
conversation. I
this
really
was
appreciate that.
fantastic. Thank you so
Okay.
much for letting me, speak. And I'm so passionate about this, and I really
Very obvious.
appreciate that
Yeah.
you gave me the space to,
Yeah.
kind of say all that's in my mind all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could tell. Well, we enjoyed it. We enjoyed having you and hearing all that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.